Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And tonight we are going to be talking about The Continental in full spoilers. But before that, we've got some stuff coming up on the horizon and some news and trailers in our On Beat segment. Let's kick things off with On the Horizon.
On the horizon.
On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff coming up in the next week or so. And this week we're starting with Fear the Walking Dead, which returns on Sunday, October 22nd on AMC. I've fallen off the entire Walking Dead train. I haven't watched any of them in ages, but...
I haven't watched Walking Dead in a while. I was thinking maybe, Maybe I'll go back and finish it at some point, but yeah.
Too much other stuff too, so. Next up on Tuesday, October 24th, CRYMACHINA comes out on PC, PS4, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. This is like a new RPG from, I think it might be Nipponichi.
Oh, cool.
So that looks good. Then on Thursday, October 26th, American Horror Stories comes to Hulu. This is an episodic anthology spinoff. So there's the American Horror Story as a seasonal anthology, and this is going to be like individual episodes that are stories.
Yeah. So like a Tales from the Crypt or Tales from the Dark Side or one of those shows.
Twilight Zone, Black Mirror, something along those lines. Yeah. Then Everyone Else Burns comes to the CW on Thursday, October 26th. This is a British series that is being brought over to networks because of the strikes.
Yeah.
But this one stars Simon Bird, who was in The In-Betweeners and also Friday Night Dinners. Very funny guy. And the premise is pretty funny. He's like the patriarch of a family that ends up joining an apocalyptic cult. And it's a comedy, so a British comedy about an apocalyptic cult. So there you go.
Nice. Yep,
coming to the CW October 26th. Then on Thursday, October 26th as well, but on Netflix this time, Pluto, which is an anime series we've mentioned several times as trailers have come out for it and stuff. This is the Astro Boy, kind of like gritty, more serious anime version of Astro Boy done by the guy who did like Monster and 20th Century Boys. So it looks really good. From the trailers we've seen, it looks phenomenal. So that's going to be exciting. And that comes on Thursday, October 26th. Then Pain Hustlers comes on Friday, October 27th to Netflix. This is another opioid true crime story. This one stars Chris Evans. There's been like a bunch, like all the streamers have like an opioid like mini series basically. And I guess this is Netflix's one coming on Friday, October 27th. Also on Friday, October 27th, South Park Joining the Panderverse comes out on Paramount Plus. We talked about the trailer. It was like a 30-second, commercial basically, really, for this the other week. Yeah, this is the one, like the title says, where they join the Panderverse.
Yeah.
Pandering to political correctness, basically, and inclusion. So we talked about this before when the trailer was out, but this is when it's coming out, October 27th. And then in video games, we have Alan Wake 2 coming out on Friday, October 27th on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. So that is a big game for a lot of people. And then in theaters, Five Nights at Freddy's comes out on Friday, October 27th. That's both to theaters and Peacock. So this is the adaptation of the video game. It's a horror film.
Simultaneously releasing theaters on Peacock?
Yes.
Oh wow, okay. I had no clue.
Kind of like they did with the Halloween movie, I think.
Yeah. Maybe I'll watch it then. Sure, why not?
Yeah, there you go. That is what is coming up on the horizon. Our next segment is On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. We have a few news stories to go through, and then we've got some trailers as well. I'm going to start things off. Last week we mentioned that the WGA strike was over, it was ratified, it was done, and that the SAG AFTRA strike was going into negotiations with the AMPTP, and we were like, this'll be short, they don't want to go through that bullshit again of all the, stupid not giving people what they deserve, and then, having the public be against them, and then eventually caving and giving them everything they want. There's no way the studios are going to be stupid enough to fall through that again. They did it with the actors, but now with the writers, they're just going to cave, and it'll be done, and the strike will be over.
That apparently turned out to be wishful thinking.
Yeah, apparently not. AMPTP shows that they are experts in wasting billions of dollars.
SAG AFTRA released a statement. In their statement, they said that the offer that the studios pushed to them at this latest meeting was actually worse than the initial offer that they made that led to them striking.
Yeah.
Which is
I want to say I'm not surprised, but I am surprised because I thought this would go through.
Apparently the studios do not want to offer any concessions on reserving the right to use people's likenesses and voices as AI for perpetuity.
Basically, they're saying, permission. We don't want to give that up because our plan is to just, wait the actors out until we can just, no longer have actors and just do it all through.
Right, yeah.
That's, not a winning strategy.
No.
So, this strike goes on. Fucking AMPTP.
Yep, strike does continue.
Our next story is that Matthew Vaughn has confirmed that Kingsman the Blue Blood, that is the working title for Kingsman 3. This is the one that Vaughn has said before that he wants to get The Rock to play the villain in. But that movie is now in the works. He set a kind of a basic shooting schedule time for when they could shoot it and everything. Who knows when that's gonna stick though because strike, but that's going into production basically. They're working on it. They're planning on doing this. He also mentioned that they're gonna do a Kick-Ass reboot. Now this isn't gonna be like a total reboot where they're just going back to the beginning and doing it over again. Apparently it's just gonna be with new characters and it's not gonna have any of the original characters in it, and that eventually maybe he might work the old characters back in another movie that follows. So, Kick-Ass franchise back out of nowhere. And then we talked about Kingsman, which is the really well-received spy series, and then he had the Kingsman, which was a prequel spin-off series to Kingsman that really didn't do that well, but there's more The Kingsman in the works as well, and it's going to be a sequel, and it's going to be about Hitler, and it's called The Kingsman, the Traitor King, and it's supposed to be about Hitler and the relationship between the British monarchy and Hitler, which there actually is some story there. It's pretty interesting, but I didn't think we were going to get more from the Kingsman just because the movie kind of flopped and it wasn't really well received. But, there was a tease for it at the end of the first Kingsman movie, so.
Matthew Vaughn wants to, continue all of, his stuff, apparently.
Yeah, he's wanted to continue the franchises, just not the Marvel franchises.
No. Oh. It's funny because, part of the story here, you saw the anecdote where he was supposed to be the director for X-Men 3: The Last Stand, which is the one that Brett Ratner ended up directing and the one everybody hates.
The one Brett Ratner ended up shitting out, you mean?
Yes, yeah. Matthew Vaughn was originally supposed to be the director, and he said he quit the project because one of the executives wrote a scene for Halle Berry to get Halle Berry to sign on to the movie. And Matthew Vaughn was looking at the script and he's like, what's this? What's this? Halle Berry hasn't signed on. And the executive basically said, oh yeah, we're going to get her to sign on. That's a scene she wants to do. But then as soon as she signs on, we're just going to ship in the scene. And his reaction was basically, that's fucked up. I'm out of here. Yeah. And he quit.
Yeah. Old Hollywood tactics and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder, what Fox said to him or promised him to get him to come back for First Class. But yeah.
There might have been some turnover in the executives.
Yeah.
That happens quite frequently. A lot of times, like, people go like, oh, this director will never work with Fox again. But then it's like, the executives at Fox that director hated now work at all of the other companies that he could work at,
Right, yeah.
People move jobs, So it's like, what, is he gonna, make the movie at Sony with the same person that he hated that made him not want to work with Fox? No, he'll go back to Fox because they have a different executive,
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
That is it for our regular news, and now we have some trailers. We got our first real trailer, actually, for Blue Eye Samurai. We had like a teaser and like a scene that was put out before. This is like a American anime take on like a Michael Green story, I guess, or like he kind of wrote this, I guess, he was one of the showrunners on American Gods, and also he wrote Cyberpunk 2049, and he's pretty big name. He's done a lot of writing. And so this is a project, we've mentioned it before when there have been trailers for it and stuff, but now we got like a real trailer to kind of give some more ideas into the plot and the structure and stuff. What do you think?
I mean, I think it looks good. It looks really good, actually. Like, very kinetic. The action looks brutal.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it looks interesting. I'm not 100% sold on the American anime style stuff, but like, it does look pretty good. And I do think Michael Green's an interesting figure to be connected to it. So I have some interest.
Also, you said like Michael Green. You said Cyberpunk 2049. It's Blade Runner 2049.
Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's understandable, after, Edge Runners have Cyberpunk on the brain. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Next, we got a trailer for Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain. We heard about this a while ago. We just knew that the Please Don't Destroy guys from Saturday Night Live were going to be doing a movie, and it was going to involve Conan O'Brien. That's kind of all we really knew about it, and we were excited at the prospects.
I love how you just said the Please Don't Destroy guys from Saturday Night Live, and my first thought in my brain was, who?
Like, so literally, Please Don't Destroy is like, you know how like The Lonely Island?
Yes.
Saturday Night Live. Like, it was like, and they made rap videos, and they were like, instead of like filmed before a live audience, they were like pre-taped segments.
Yeah.
Kind of thing,
like,
and they had their
Dear
own
Sister
kind of
skit,
continuity.
I think, was like, what, like, got them to blow up.
Yeah.
That was like a huge, like, that became like an internet meme, that skit, when that dropped.
Please Don't Destroy is kind of like that. They're not like musical, like it's not in that sense, but they do skits that take place backstage at Saturday Night Live with 3 writers from Saturday Night Live. And the 3 people in Please Don't Destroy, they are writers at Saturday Night Live. And then they do these skits occasionally as well that are all called Please Don't Destroy, and then they have like a sub-name or something. They just did one on the most recent Saturday Night Live, the one with Pete Davidson, where it was like supposed to be that they got their start as like little kids, like being on like Def Comedy Jam or something. It was really ridiculous, like kind of skit, but they do all these really kind of funny skits like that. And,
it's funny because like I was watching this, like, yeah, it has Conan O'Brien in it, and it's funny because when you think about it, you're like, Conan O'Brien like doesn't really do acting. He doesn't like appear in things.
No.
Right?
He was in Weird, the Al Yankovic story.
yeah, he was in that, yes.
Yeah, he's not an actor. He will deprecate himself in saying, that he is definitely not an actor. And you can tell from this that he's definitely not an actor.
Right, yeah.
But he's funny, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly. That's all the movie needs. His part's probably like a very small part of the movie anyway.
Yeah.
From the trailer, I gather like it seems like he's only in the beginning of the film, and then like once they get off on their adventure, like you're never gonna see or hear from Conan again in that movie.
Maybe the end, maybe in like the epilogue of the movie or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it looks funny. It looks hilarious. It kind of like, it's kind of like old school in a way, right? It kind of like reminds me of like a Judd Apatow movie from like the early 2000s or something.
I'd recommend checking out some of the Please Don't Destroy skits. Just type in like Please Don't Destroy SNL and you'll get like a whole bunch of the skits. They're pretty funny.
Nice.
And that's like these guys. And, the movie itself is called Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain. So it's like, it's a continuation of that whole thing. I think it's interesting.
I kind of like it's a spoof of like kids' adventure movies,
Mhm.
and I kind of like the conceit that like there was like this treasure that they heard about like as kids or something, and now they're grown up and they decide like they're going to like do that like whole adventure thing like as adults.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because Saturday Night Live used to have like a really good track history of like movies that kind of were based on things from Saturday Night Live, like Wayne's World is like
based
probably
on
the
like
best example. Night at the Roxbury, like they've done like a bunch of these kind of things, but like, they're always kind of hit and miss.
Coneheads, it's Pat. Remember the It's Pat movie?
Yeah, they're always kind of hit and miss, And
Right,
the recent ones have been pretty bad, but this one looks pretty good. Like this one looks like it's up there with like the old ones that I enjoyed more. It's also interesting because there's a story that Conan has told on his podcast a number of times now about, remember Hans and Franz? The Hans and Franz skits? They were going to make a Hans and Franz movie.
With Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, it wasn't with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It was like a spoof of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No, it was a spoof, but I heard like the version of the story that said like they wanted to make a movie and they wanted to get Arnold Schwarzenegger involved in the movie.
Yeah, this is the movie, a long time ago they wanted to.
Yeah.
This was like before Conan had his show and everything. This is like way back. But they wanted to do the movie. It didn't work out. They had a couple of meetings and they talked about it. Like, so when he's had other people like Kevin Nealon and people that were involved in this on the podcast, they've talked about this. Apparently, and I haven't listened to this episode of the podcast, he had Arnold Schwarzenegger on his podcast. And Arnold Schwarzenegger said that he liked the idea of doing it. So maybe the next Saturday Night Live movie we're going to get is Hans and Franz, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, maybe. What was Hans and Franz? That was Kevin Nealon and
is it Dana Carvey?
I think Dana Carvey. Yeah.
This will pump you up.
Yes. Oh my god. 90s SNL is the best. SNL for sure.
I completely agree. I don't really like modern SNL that much. There are a few sketches that are like amazing in the current era, but they're like few and far between. Whereas like the 90s was pretty consistent.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But yeah, so that is Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain. Then we got a trailer for Invincible Season 2. We've been waiting for this for a while. We got a teaser, and simultaneously as the teaser dropped, we got an episode, the first episode of Season 2, that's kind of a self-contained story about Adam Eve that we already got from Invincible. Like when, I think it was not a Geek Tweak, it was one of Netflix's event things where they released all that information and ended up releasing that episode. But now we got an actual trailer for Season 2 showing kind of the thematic events that are occurring and showing some of the action. What did you think of Invincible Season 2 from what you've seen now of this trailer?
It looks great. It looks fantastic.
It looks improved. Like the animation looks improved.
They put more money into the budget.
Yeah, because it was a pretty big success, the original series. So yeah, I think it looks great. I think some people are freaking out about the ending because they have the whole part where it's like apparently Mark turned bad, but there's a pretty obvious clue early in the episode or early in the trailer that should dispel that.
Right. I mean, obviously it's not gonna go there. Like,
yeah.
Come on, people. Don't be rubes.
But yeah, I'm excited. Invincible Season 2, it is coming.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of animated projects, we got Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. We got, again, like our first real trailer before we've gotten some other trailers, but this is our first real one.
This looks really good. It looks really fantastic. I think animation is like the perfect medium for Scott Pilgrim because, like, I mean, Edgar Wright did a fantastic job with the movie.
Yeah, well, he basically made like a live action cartoon, and
yeah, he did the best he could at making a live action cartoon. But this can truly go to that next level and have the kind of grandeur and spectacle that you can achieve in a live action film.
Honestly, the most exciting thing about this trailer for me was seeing Edgar Wright's name.
Yeah, Edgar Wright is a producer on this, I believe, and they got the cast from the film back
Yep.
to voice all their characters. So like every character in this is voiced by their actor from the film.
Yes, which is awesome.
Yes.
So, I wasn't sure what they were going to do with this before, and it looks like it's like a straight up reboot, like retelling the story. I heard that there were like other stories involved and stuff. I don't know if they're going to dive into that, because since they're doing it as a series, that means that they have more runtime to play with. So it'll be interesting to see like what kind of stuff, cause I'm not really familiar with the comic outside of just having seen it around, you know? I'm interested in like what kind of other stories outside of kind of the main plot we're going to get in this version, since they have more time to play with that. But yep, that's Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. And then lastly, we got an anime trailer that looked particularly interesting. This is one of the really big new Shonen Jump series that's been blowing up, and it's Kaiju number 8. It's like this and Chainsaw Man, and there's like a few others that are kind of like the new big Shonen Jump properties that everyone's talking about. And Kaiju number 8 is about a guy. It's a world in which there's kaijus attacking Japan, and he ends up it looks like he's attacked by some kind of an insect, and it goes inside him and kind of turns him into a kaiju.
Yeah.
And, this is this new wave of like Shonen Jump series, like Chainsaw Man and stuff, where it's like a lot more violent, a lot more stylistic. It's kind of moving away from the more, I guess, gentle, if you could even call it that, like ways of like, say, Dragon Ball and One Piece. Where, you know, we say gentle, but like people die and there's like genocides and murders and shit going on in those series. But Kaiju number 8 is like more in that line of like Chainsaw Man, where it's like much more violent, much more stylistic. Almost has like a Tarantino vibe,
Here's
like
the thing.
Chainsaw Man, and you know.
Apparently, Japanese Zoomers want their over-the-top ultra-violence for their shonen. So
they've had that like gonzo genre of like action and horror that they've had since like way before the 90s, but like in the 90s was really big with like directors like Takashi Miike who did like these really crazy gonzo horror films. And it seems like that's kind of almost like gone back, and then because those were like a lot of them were based on manga series, and now it seems like those movies have gone and like re-influenced like new manga series that are
but those movies
Shonen
were
Jump.
In Shonen Jump. Like
no.
I remember, like Shonen Jump is like geared towards like adolescent boys. You know, it's not like Takashi Miike. Like his films were not aimed at that.
They're hard R's.
They were very much for adults.
Yeah, but what I mean is like Ichi the Killer was based on a manga, for example,
right?
And then when Miike did it, he did it and took it in this whole gonzo direction that he's like known for. And it's like that kind of gonzo stylistic, but like with a manga background style, I think has kind of influenced works like Chainsaw Man and like Kaiju number 8 now and some other series. So
I think it's interesting that's trickling down into Shonen Jump, into media that, you know, that's for younger readers.
Yeah, they're like pushing the envelope on what they can put in there, you know?
Right, yeah.
But it's pretty crazy. Chainsaw Man was great, so I'm looking forward to Kaiju number 8. And that is it for our news segment. And that leaves only full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are discussing The Continental, which is the spin-off prequel series to John Wick. It's a limited series, 1 season, 1 and done, 3 episodes. Every episode is like feature length, and it's about Winston Scott, who is Ian McShane's character from the John Wick movies.
Yeah, he's the proprietor of The Continental in the John Wick films.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
But here we see him taking over the Continental through the course of this series from a villain played by a villain.
Played by Mel Gibson, which honestly, disregarding Mel Gibson as a person, it honestly is a great performance in this, probably because, like, he knows all about, like, being this character already.
It's funny because he got top billing for the series, but he's probably got, like, the least screen time of almost everybody that I put on our cast list here.
Right.
Because in my show notes, I put a list of, like, all the characters so that, like, if we're struggling to name a character, we can just kind of quickly glance down the list and see a name or something. And I'm, like, looking looking at all of it and I'm like, I think he might have the least screen time, yet he got like top billing for the series because he's Mel Gibson. He's the biggest name by far.
He's the main villain of the entire series too. Like,
yeah, he is, but he's also,
he does have some big scenes too.
Yeah.
Like some big like scenes involve his character. So it's kind of half and half there.
Yeah, I think it's exciting that we not only
he gets the top billing because obviously he's the biggest known.
He's the biggest star.
Cast. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that we not only got to see kind of like a young version of Winston Scott, but we also got to see several other characters that we've known through it. We got to see Sharon, who is played by the late Lance Reddick, and a younger version here. We even got to see the cleaner from the original John Wick movies, who is Uncle Charlie. And he was the cleaner in the very first John Wick movie. I don't even remember if he showed up in the other ones. He was just in the first one. He's the guy that went to John Wick's house and cleaned up all the bodies. And then later on, he was when the Continental was there to take out the one woman that had broken the rules or whatever. Yeah. So we see his character in like a younger version as well. So I think that's kind of cool. And it also kind of touches on like pieces of the lore, sometimes in big chunks and sometimes just in little hints. Like, for instance, we get to see the Bowery, and we know Lawrence Fishburne's character is the king of the Bowery, you know?
Yeah.
And now we get to see kind of the person who apparently started that group and how her organization runs. Brief role. She's not in it a lot, but I just think that's kind of interesting that they were able to kind of take a story mostly focused on Winston, but tie in all these other elements that we know from the John Wick universe.
Right.
But you know what this movie did better?
Origin. This is Winston's origin story.
Yeah. But you know what this movie did better than anything else it did?
What?
It had pneumatic tubes.
Yes, lots of
pneumatic tubes.
Really?
There's just something about pneumatic tubes. It's just so weird and interesting. And I remember being a little kid and going to the bank, and they didn't have the drive-through ATMs, but they had the pneumatic tubes that you would deposit your checks in and stuff. And I remember going through there with my mom and her putting in her check into that little canister and putting in the pneumatic tube. And then when it would pop up in things like Lost, had a whole storyline involving pneumatic tubes. You know, it was always it's just such a weird technology that's just
Yeah, I guess I never really thought much about it. It's yeah.
I love pneumatic tubes. And I love when they're used well, and they are here for a pretty fun sequence actually where
the pneumatic tubing explosives in one sequence.
Yeah. It's a great sequence. It ended up with the death of one of my favorite characters in this series, so unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Lemmy, R.I.P.
Yep, Rip Lemmy, who's a great character. He's one of the supporting characters in this.
Yeah.
He's Miles' friend.
I think by the end of it, when I look back, my favorite two characters in this whole thing were Lemmy and Gene Jenkins, who was another one of the
Gene was fantastic, yeah.
The aging sniper, yeah.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, that's the one thing, this thing did, because at the heart of it, this is a heist film. This has all the hallmarks of the classic heist film, including putting the team together, and it's a pretty eccentric team that Winston assembles. You know, you already mentioned Lemmy and Gene. Then he has Lou and Miles, who run a karate dojo in Chinatown, and they're also gun runners on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, the strength of the show is in its kind of characters and in its setting and in the setting of the characters. So it really has that 70s vibe down just from the needle drops, from the locations, just the way New York has that look that you're used to seeing in old movies about New York, when New York City was supposed to be super dangerous, you know, and the Warriors, you know.
Oh yeah.
This kind of trashy.
Yeah, it definitely takes inspiration from stuff like The Warriors, from
the really old Scorsese films, and
the Scorsese films set in New York in that period, stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It's got such a style with that. It's got, you know,
it's funny because they really play with the setting too. There's so many references to 70s stuff in there, towards the end, when Cormac O'Connor is like in the control room and like the one like programmer he's got there, like he's got like a Commodore PET computer, and then when like Pong comes up on the screen.
Yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff. I thought the needle drops were great. I liked the commercials that were put into it.
Yes.
There's let's go down to the lobby, like playing at the movie theater when they go there in the one scene. Then they had another one. I can't remember what it was, but it was another classic jingle. And like I was literally singing along to the jingle as I'm watching this action scene. And it had great needle drops in general too. So like the music was great as well. Like throughout lots of licensed songs, like pretty big ones from the 70s that were used pretty well and in a cool way. I also think they did a good job in like the John Wick series, being such an action series, it has these kind of like eccentric, like larger than life, like villain characters, or sometimes they're villains, sometimes they're just like random hitmen that you don't really get to know that well, but like they're just eccentric and weird looking or interesting,
Oh yeah.
And they were able to do that here with Hansel and Gretel.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, they don't really like do it much here. Like there's some in like the last episode, I believe, like you get to see some more eccentric characters. They don't get like really any screen time, pretty much.
Hansel and Gretel do. They get.
But no, that's why I say Hansel and Gretel are like the secondary main antagonist besides Cormac. I always like when we were talking about John Wick. What was it, John Wick 3?
Mm-hmm.
In that podcast, I noted how like there's a main villain and then there's like a main action villain, like that John Wick fights. Like and I think that holds true here. Like Cormac is the main villain of the series.
Hansel and Gretel are the action villains of the series.
Yes, because they're the ones that get into the skirmishes.
Yeah, definitely. They had some cool fights with them, with the sister being like a contortionist and the way she moves is like really creepy and stuff. The guy who plays Hansel, Mark Musashi, he's a mocap artist for like video games. Like he did mocap for like The Last of Us Part 2 and stuff. So he has like really striking forms, He had the scene where he was like fighting them in the hotel, and like he stopped one of them with his foot and then like was like holding off another with his arm, and it was just very like stylish and cool looking and really kind of fit to like portray the character,
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, like, yeah, they did fantastic. They were like appropriately creepy and like, also like they were tough. Like, it's funny because like, the one character, like Lou, Miles' sister, who like helped runs the dojo, she gets into like a lot of fights in this, like where she's pretty handily taking down. The way their subplots is like they're being like menaced by this guy, the Orphan Master, who's like a Chinese crime boss who has like history with like the founder of their dojo, which is like Lou and Miles' father, who's deceased.
Yes.
But like he has a grudge and he's taking it out on them, He's trying to get like their dojo shut down. There's a scene where the boy, this young boy, like working for the Orphan Master, like breaks her window, like probably like the 5th time. It's like the 2nd time in the series, at least. And she catches him and she chases him down and she runs into like the Orphan Master and he has like his goons, try to take her out outside like his place. And she just like very handily like kicks the shit out of very one of them. Right.
Yeah.
And you see like that multiple times. So like you're shown like she's a very capable fighter, very capable person. Then there's a scene in the last episode where both her and her brother Miles are just fighting, Hansel by himself. And they struggle, and in fact, they almost lose to him. They both almost die. If it wasn't for, like, the boy, who was with the Orphan Master, that she kind of, like, saves from him. Like, popping up at the last minute and giving her father's gun.
Deus ex machina.
Yeah, Deus ex machina. Yeah, exactly. So, like, that's, like, I think the best idea of, like, just how intimidating of villains that these are. Like, everybody else is a pushover until you get to Hansel and Gretel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. What about, we have Winston Scott's brother, Frankie, who totally feels like a John Wick prototype.
He does.
When you see him before, he's nothing like John Wick. He's like, when you first see him, he's kind of like all smiling and happy and talking to people and stuff, and he's very exuberant, and then you see that he's kind of got his own thing going and stuff, and it's like very not John Wick, not as serious as John Wick as that, but when he's fighting, it's like him and
fights
Yen.
just like John Wick.
Yeah, him and Yen, his like wife, who's like North Vietnamese, or North Korean, I think.
No, Vietnamese.
Well, it's 70. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
They're in Vietnam.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
The era's fucking with me because there's no year given, just 70s, you know? So
it was, I believe the year was like 73, when they did her flashback. It said 73, I believe.
Okay.
So this is like, like the actual story. I don't think like a year was given for like when the current events are taking place, but it's like later in the 70s.
Yeah. It's interesting the way they portrayed them. I kind of thought, like, as I was watching it, like, this is gonna be John Wick's parents. Cause we don't know anything about their parents. And I'm like, Frankie he looks a little like John Wick. He's tall, he's got like the long hair, he's got like a similar like facial shape and stuff, you know? He's got that kind of Keanu Reeves kind of look to him, but he's like a little bit bigger. And, you know, like, and then Yen is like, you know, cause Keanu Reeves is part Asian, you know, it's like you have Yen who's Asian and she's with this guy and I'm like, they have this relationship and it seems kind of doomed and fraught and you're like, I could totally see this being like John Wick's parents.
Oh,
but
yeah.
then Frankie dies.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Frankie
unless
dies.
Yen was pregnant, I guess that there's no way that that's John Wick.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm gonna be honest. I'm glad they didn't do that. That would have been corny. And also to like have John Wick like be related to Winston, like blood related, would have been weird. I don't know.
Yeah, it would have been a weird change. But like, there was one thing I kind of did like about it though, which is throughout it, you got to see like the way Frankie fought is very similar to the way like John Wick fought.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Then,
it was definitely a John Wick fight at the beginning of like
with
the
guns,
series.
with guns. But then when Yen was fighting with a knife, that's also the way John Wick fights. Like she was doing things, and I like the way they portrayed it because there's a thing that John Wick does several times where like he'll have a knife and he'll be struggling with somebody with it, and he'll hold the knife on them and then use his other hand to like bat it into them to like hammer the knife into them.
Yes, and Yen does this.
And Yen does it, but she does it in a way that's like as if she hasn't done it before and she just thought of it. Like that's kind of how it occurs in it. So it's kind of like, oh, it's almost like this is the prototype knife stab move that John Wick does, you know? She kind of did it, and
I'm pretty sure, like,
or something.
I'm pretty sure, like, the only reason, like, these characters are doing these moves in this is to get that John Wickness into this, you know, like, into, like, the action sequences.
Yeah.
I think it's more to be familiar than, like, any kind of hints or clues as to, like, the lore.
But it is kind of, like, just interesting that they're almost like these, like, prototype parents almost for
right.
John Wick, or,
yeah,
like
conceptually it could totally work. Yeah, but, yeah, the basic, I'm just gonna run through the plot of this, like, really fast. Basically, the boilerplate of this is Frankie ends up stealing the coin press, the Continental coin press.
I'm gonna cut off right there and just say, like, that was a fucking cool sequence. I just want to point out.
Yes, that was.
The way he stole it with the way it hooked onto the train and pulled the safe out. Oh, that was so cool.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. Yeah. Like I said, like the show is so cool. And so he steals the coin press and he goes MIA. And so Cormac O'Connor drags Winston Scott from London to New York and tasks him with finding Frankie and finding the coin press. Winston also wants to find Frankie for his own reasons, and so he goes looking. He ends up at the karate dojo. That's where he meets Lou and Miles, because that's the place he's told that, you know, Frankie has a connection to. Eventually he ends up finding Frankie and Yen. They're hiding out in an abandoned theater. And basically at that point, Winston has, like, no intention of honoring his deal with Cormac O'Connor. He just wants to make sure Frankie is safe.
Yeah.
At that point.
Like, Frankie and him are legitimately, like, fractured. Like, their relationship as brothers, they kind of don't really talk to each other or anything. But Winston feels like a debt to Frankie because Winston did something as a child and Frankie took the fall for it.
Yes.
And so he's got, like, this feeling of like, responsibility. So he's, like, helping his brother out. And then he gets kind of pulled into everything that's going on.
And that's another thing too, like, with the flashbacks, cause, like, both Winston and Frankie have history with Cormac. Cormac took them under his wing as children. And as they say, you know, like, he manipulated them. You know, and Winston did everything he could to get out of, you know, to get away from Cormac. And apparently, like, Frankie fell into that life, you know, where he was one of Cormac's, like, men.
Yeah, Frankie went to war and then he came back and joined, Cormac's ranks.
Yeah.
Because it's what he knew how to do.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the setup plot, and then,
and then Frankie dies.
Yeah, soon after they're united, there's some action sequences. Frankie ends up sacrificing himself so that Winston and Yang can get away, and then
that sets Winston on his path that, like Frankie's death sets Winston on his path, and that path is like he's going to kill Cormac and take over his hotel. And that leads to like this absolutely insane, like, heist plan, and the whole like gathering of the crew. That's where that comes in. Mm-hmm. And that's the basic setup of this series.
Let's talk about there is a subplot that ties into kind of all the other events, involving a police officer who is investigating Frankie. And at first you think like, oh, why she got her bug up her ass about this and stuff. What's interesting about this story, at least in the beginning stages, is that it's like, I think the first time in the entire like John Wick franchise that we get to see like an outsider's perspective of this like world of assassins, this like underworld.
Oh,
she goes into the Continental she observes like the gold coins and the thing,
because she's not part of that world. She's not from that world. She knows nothing about that world.
Yeah, the man she's sleeping with, her partner, does, but he is like trying to dissuade her from getting involved in it without telling her because he doesn't want to get her involved in it.
Right.
And
yeah, exactly.
She's insisted on getting involved. We don't really know why at first. It's kind of, I wasn't too terribly fond of the plot besides like just the outsider's view of all the stuff going on. I thought was interesting. Besides that,
it was a kind of thing like where like I kind of like just like, there were questions like, why does she care so much? And, where's this going? But I trusted that was going to be part of the process. That was like, answers are going to come for that. And don't worry about it. It's kind of the way I took it.
Yeah, they did in an interesting way, which is that when Winston Scott had thrown a like Molotov cocktail into a building when he was a kid, because he and his brother were set to do so by Cormac, thinking that the building was empty, that they were like burning it down.
I think they were
money or something.
Yeah, I think it's never explicitly stated, but it's heavily implied that Cormac told them that the building was empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they burn down the building, and then quickly after throwing it, they start hearing screams and realize that there's people in this building. This is like a changing point for Frankie and Winston. This is when Winston takes the fall when Frankie takes the fall for Winston, and when Winston basically decides to make a break from Cormac and all that.
And it's funny, like, because at the end, at the climax, when Winston confronts Cormac, who's trying to escape the Continental, Cormac admits, like, he purposely sent them to burn down an apartment with a family in it because he said they needed blood on their hands, so that he could cement his hold on them, keep them under his thumb, so that he would have something on them that they couldn't get out of.
And this is all overheard by our police officer, who at first was blaming Winston and not really giving him a chance for excuses when she had confronted him earlier, but now she's kind of hearing it straight from Cormac. And,
it turns out, like, she was the daughter of, the family that was, like, burned to death in that apartment building. She apparently, like...
He's the only survivor, yeah.
She apparently is the lone survivor.
Yeah. And so we get her motivations wrapped up and realize, how that event was so monumental, not just for Winston and Frankie, but also for her. And in turn, now it's come back that the bills come due for Cormac on this issue as well. So you could see how it like was this like focal point or that, changed all of these characters.
Oh yeah. We should talk about Sharon, obviously Lance Reddick's character from the John Wick films. Obviously, we see a younger version here who is like, Cormac's, right-hand man. Cormac is apparently like grooming Sharon. And he's real interesting in this too, because, Winston tries to recruit him as an inside man so that he could, in his plot.
I think they made this story a little too convenient.
Yeah.
Because they set up the idea that Sharon had this kind of relationship with this musician who plays at the Continental, and that the musician planning to leave and do his own thing and talking to Sharon about how Sharon could leave with him sets Cormac off to like just straight up murder him on Continental grounds.
Honestly, like one of Cormac's like best scenes in the show too is that scene.
Yeah, and he does it on company grounds as well. well. Which is
Yes.
also set up to tell us that something else is wrong, because through this whole series there's an adjudicator, and she's not acting even after he kills on Continental grounds, even though she's kind of like opposed to him, and you're like, what's her motivation? But we'll get back to that later.
Oh, yeah. We'll get back to that when we circle around to her.
But yeah, he kills this guy on Coming Grounds that Sharon was so close to, and then leaves the body there for Sharon to see, basically cementing that Sharon's gonna betray him. Like, Sharon heard what Winston had to say and wasn't really buying it. And then fucking Cormac killed the guy, and now it's like, okay, well, what do you think's gonna happen now?
Right, yeah, exactly.
It was a little bit too convenient for me, but it was still an interesting story.
And
it was just could have maybe used a little bit more time, a little bit more circumstances, maybe a little bit more playing up Cormac's paranoia as to why he would snap like that in such a dangerous way, which I don't think they maybe just didn't do enough of. Maybe just because they only had 3 episodes to do it, you know?
Right, yeah, that's fair.
But,
and then, and since you brought it up, that brings us to the adjudicator, played by Katie McGrath from Supergirl.
Lena Luthor.
Yeah, which I didn't even know until I read the show notes.
She looks very familiar, and I couldn't place her.
Yes,
and then when I was researching it, I was like, oh shit. That's how I know her.
But yeah, like, she's brought in because of the theft of the coin press. The Continental losing its coin press obviously has the high table on edge, and you know, she gives...
that's not really why she's there.
Yeah.
She's there because she set up the theft of the coin press.
That's true. Yeah. That's
that
true.
comes out later on. As I mentioned, like, you start to question the adjudicator's motives when she's talking about how, like, maybe it's time for Cormac's end to come. Maybe, like, she's talking about this all earlier on, and then, like, they get a report that Cormac killed on Continental grounds, and she's like, oh, don't tell anybody. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, this is
exactly.
This should be your wet dream come true. This is like everything you were plotting towards, like, apparently.
Right, yeah, like, this is your chance to bring the hammer down, right? Yeah.
It's like, why is she suddenly, like, playing coy on this, you know? And then you find out at the end of the series, and a truly badass move by Winston Scott, where he just fucking blows her brains out.
Oh, yeah.
Just almost to make a point. Almost, it's just kind of like, yeah, you set this shit up. Look at the disaster you caused, the people that died, my brother, everything. Fuck you. Now you're dead. Now the high table's gonna have to deal with me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, cool scene. Her bodyguard, the person that's with her in the mask that's brutal and does some pretty violent stuff throughout in the early scenes, is actually one of the showrunners of this series.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah.
That's a little funny kind of carryover, so.
So overall thoughts?
I really liked it. I enjoyed the tone. I enjoyed, like I said, I loved all the needle drops in it, the music. I liked the setting. I liked the characters. I really liked, Winston Scott. Colin Woodell, who plays him in this, is like, it's just a really charming, interesting character to follow. And, I liked the way it played out. I really liked the ending when he killed the adjudicator. I thought that was such a badass moment. Yeah, I kind of want to see more of this. I don't know if they're going to continue. I don't know if they're going to do like a second Continental series. I don't think they will, but I'd like to see more stuff kind of in this vein, you know, more stuff like in that John Wick universe presented in different ways. We know we're getting a movie called like Ballerina, I think it stars Ana de Armas, and that's also set in the John Wick universe. But I'd like to get more kind of stuff like this as well. I think it's interesting.
No, yeah, I think this was a cool series. It had lots of style, panache. You know, it had the action you expect from John Wick. It also had a different vibe. It also had its own vibe to it, right?
Yeah, like I said, the whole like 70s New York thing, you know, that dangerous New York thing.
70s New York thing, like the heist plot, you know, which John Wick movies aren't really about heists. The cast of characters were different. You know, like, again, like a John Wick film is usually like, he's basically like a lone wolf in these films, and like there's a lot of side characters too, but they usually like cycle in and out of a plot as needed. And like most of the characters John Wick interacts with are like people who's trying to kill him and he ends up killing. So to have like the character like surround himself with like allies and stuff, and like just a very like diverse, eccentric cast of characters was also like interesting and different for the series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I like that it's a different kind of story within the John Wick universe, but it has the hallmarks of the John Wick universe that we expect, like the action and the lore, you know. But besides that, it's kind of like a different story. It's a heist story, as you said.
Yeah.
But you could make the argument that all John Wick stories are heist stories because John Wick is stealing souls.
Yeah, true.
Stealing
point.
souls to the underworld.
There's one thing, speaking of John Wick, like, there is one part in this where, like, a character mentions the boogeyman.
Oh, yeah.
Who the hell are they talking about? Yeah. What is that in reference to? Like,
well, if you
that didn't make
remember in John Wick when they first mentioned the Baba Yaga and stuff and he said the boogeyman, so you're saying John Wick's the boogeyman, the first thing that the one mob boss guy says in answer to that is like, well, John Wick's the man you send to kill the boogeyman.
oh, true.
So maybe the boogeyman was like a famous figure in that world and John Wick killed him.
Maybe. Who knows?
That would be interesting, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is the Continental, and that is it for this week's podcast. Next week, we are going to be talking about season 1 of Chucky. Yes, we know season 3 is currently airing. I haven't watched any of it, so I'm going to be going in, and we're talking about season 1, because I haven't watched that yet. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at VoxelHero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up any of the container stories for our podcast, scroll down to that last paragraph. You're going to find all of the relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed, personal Twitter accounts, personal Facebook, all that stuff. It's all there. So check all of that out when you get the chance. You can also subscribe to the podcast through any podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel as well. So check that out. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.